Good morning. Namaste. I hope you're well. So beautiful to connect with you here on the ether. So today I'm going to be sharing some wisdom and some thoughts around spirituality. What is spirituality? So I noticed that at a point when I was stabilizing onto the spiritual path, there was a point where, quite early on, there was a point where I still was blended with parts of my ego that was still holding on to those kind of old ways of thinking, the judgment and the critic. And I remember that I used to see other people on the spiritual path, and I used to judge where they were at in relation to where I was. And I didn't realize what I was doing at first, of course, because I was still, I was on that journey of awareness, of becoming aware of my mind and my ego. And so I used to project this judgment of other people and where they were on their spiritual path in comparison to my spiritual path, and form these judgments about how spiritual they were. And this seemed really relevant and seemed really normal. And as time went on and I understood about our emotional and energetic projections and how harmful they can be and what's really going on there, I started to refine my mind and become less judgmental. And I would correct my mind and worked on that, that stuff that was that old energy that was there, that was driving me to be still judgmental, still be critical. So I worked on that stuff, and the judgment kind of decreased, but I still, because of my particular perspective and viewpoint, because I hadn't recognized yet that really we don't know everything. We don't, and the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. I hadn't come to that realization yet. I was in those early stages. When you kind of come into spirituality, often you can feel like, whoa, okay, now I really know everything. Now I really get it. I get, and we think that this is what we're learning. This is it. Spirituality is it. It's just kind of waking up and like being like, oh, things are different. But again, I hadn't realized that this was only the tip of the iceberg. This was only the start of the rabbit hole that I would spend the rest of this life exploring, and many, 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 many lives. And the more we evolve and expand, and we read and we experience through our own deep meditation, working with plant medicine, speaking to other people, we realize just how much more there is to unravel on this spiritual path. And now I understand that the judgments that I had before about, oh, I'm more spiritual and they're more spiritual, I understand that in a completely different light now. I am compassionate to myself for having been judgmental, and that's okay. But what I find really interesting about that whole era, that whole phase, is that when we're really early on in that phase, we form our opinions about everybody else and about the world based on what we think that spirituality is. And there's a bit of a sticky point there, because for those of us that are quite early on in our spiritual path, we can kind of get into this self-righteousness of like, well, I know best now because I'm on this path and I know what's good for healing and I know what's good for wellness and I'm doing it. And this is where we can run into a bit of trouble because the people around us some of them are watching, some of them are wanting us to share in that with them. And if we are not careful, then we can take people on a journey where they feel and understand spirituality in the way that we do. And if that way that we see and understand spirituality is still tainted with that old perspective, which is still tied into our old karma of like, I know, then that's the message that we're passing on. So my question today is, what is spirituality? And I wanted to share that reflection because I feel like many of us, and I observe many of us falling into that trap of this, early journey with awakening, that we fall into this trap of self-righteousness, of thinking that we know what spirituality is, thinking that we know that we are more spiritual, thinking that we know that one thing is better than the other. But the bottom line is that spirit doesn't judge whether one person's like more spiritual than the other person. And it's us that judges. Spirituality is the awareness, the realization and the awareness that we are spirit, soul, and that spirit, soul is the innate aspect of us, and that everything else is an expression of spirit and soul. So body and mind are both expressions of spirit. We express as a body, as a mind. Soul expresses as a body and mind. And just that awareness alone is, for me, what spirituality is. So potentially the most spiritual thing that we can do is be in service to others in some way. Potentially the most spiritual thing we can do is farm, cultivate land, earth keep, spend our time in ceremony with the earth, with the plants, with the trees, with the deities. When we recognize that the fundamental true essence of what and who we are as spirit, and we realize and recognize that in everybody else, and we recognize that we're here to explore that beingness of spirit. And then we create, as a part of our service to this, we create service to aid and support people, sentient beings, and the earth to just be in their beingness. And we facilitate beautiful environments, peace, love, healing for people, sentient beings, and Mother Earth. And that's just it. When we make that realization and we make that commitment that that's what I'm going to spend my time here on earth to do, to support people to live happy, free lives in whatever way, so that they can explore their beingness. When we make that commitment, that in itself is spirituality. Spirituality isn't how many oracle deck cards you have, or how you dress, or the kind of buzzwords that you use, or how many shamanic training workshops you've been to. It's not any of those things. And I observe very much so the tying in of the old ego, the old energy into spirituality. I speak to people all the time about coming onto teacher training programs or online courses, or coming to do some work with me. And I get to hear what people are up to. I get to hear the kinds of things that they are doing. And there is a really big movement of people who are choosing certain workshops and courses because of particular trends that are existing out there, because we've attached our sense of what being spiritual is. We've attached that to being seen in certain circles, to being associated with certain people, with certain words, with certain types of lineages. We've forgotten, we're still giving our power away to that, if we're not careful, and we've forgotten that the truest, purest channel of wisdom, of spiritual knowledge is here. It's within us. And we can tap into that. We can learn to cultivate that and tap into that. That's why my transmissions are called the Antidote. And in my earlier transmissions, I talked a lot about you are the antidote, not me, not anyone else, not your teachers. It's you. You hold the stargates within you that open you up to hyperdimensional realities where you can explore your beingness on other levels, and you can encounter the beingness of other entities on other levels, not just here in this physical 3D reality, relative reality, because what we get here on Earth isn't the full picture, and it's going to be limited. So when we go beyond our 5 sensory perception, and we explore our beingness in other levels and in other ways, we really start to learn, we really start to get to the heart of the matter of really what we truly are, what we are here to do and to share. We get to experience the abundance of beingness in hyperdimensional realities, not just on this earth. So coming back to what is spirituality, spirituality is recognizing the technology of spirit. Whether that's like totally beginner level, like I recognize that I have a spirit, I recognize I am spirit, I recognize I'm soul, I am soul. Spirituality, that's it. And again, there is absolutely no judgment except for from ourselves about what that is and what that means. So we judge each other about how spiritual we are, and we speak to each other, and, oh, well, actually, I went to that festival and that event, and I'm being taught by this teacher and that teacher, and we can come back to this humbleness and this remembrance that the highest teacher, the most profound teacher that you're ever going to meet is within you. Your spirit, spirituality, it's your spirit that is in the hot seat of your journey, of your spirituality, of whatever that is to you. So who's to say that Joe Blogs comes and says, well, I'm a farmer and I look after animals and make cheese and milk to feed people, and I grow vegetables and I'm doing things the best that I can, and I'm going organic, and I'm learning more about how to live closely with the earth. Why would we judge Joe Blogs? Well, we do because we have this old patterning and conditioning, and ultimately at the same time, Joe Blogs he's doing his best for planet Earth, and he's coming to that alignment of recognizing spirit is at the center of everything, and that his desire now is shifting towards the greatest and highest good for him and the people that he's serving, and that in itself is spirituality. And so if he dedicates his entire life to farming which is not a profitable business, by the way. Farmers are like some of the hardest up for cash out there, and they're very isolated because they're way out in the deep countryside. But it's a real act of spirituality. It's a real spiritual gift and gift to the world for somebody to dedicate their whole lives, sacrifice their whole lives to serving us with food. So, Hunk, you've just joined. Could you give a brief of what this is about? So this is about what is spirituality. And I've just been spending a little bit of time talking about that spirituality is the recognition of spirit within us, that we are spirit, soul, and that everything else in our world is an expression of that. Everything else in this world is an expression of spirit or soul, of some spirit and some soul. And when we start to tap more into these other hyperdimensional realities that are other than this, say, let's speak in a little bit more of a dualistic nature. So other than this physical reality, so there are other layers, right? This is physical. It is like 3D. Relative reality of Earth is like one layer, and there are many, many layers. And on many of these layers, these dimensions where we can exist as energy, as consciousness also, we can tap into these. They are not time bound. So this physical reality is time bound. In order for us to have physical matter, we need to have time, because that time creates a boundary and a structure from which physical matter can form. So in some of these other dimensions, there is no time. Everything exists all at once, past, present, and future. And so actually, our most highly evolved consciousness exists in that realm, in those realms, because that future all exists at once. And so when we start to tap into that, we start to tap into like our higher self. We talk about our higher self a lot, and we throw these words about, but what do they actually mean? Our higher self is that more evolved version of us that's existing on a timeless dimension that is patiently guiding us here in this physical reality and in other realities. So spirituality, the recognition of spirit, the unity, yoga, the unity of our entire being with spirit in this world on planet Earth, generally speaking, there's been like an agenda to just like, separate spirit out from everything else. So we get, stuck into this mechanistic, industrialized 9-to-5 way of doing things, and it's bound us. So many people say it's enslaved us. It's bound us to these structures and institutions and ways of doing things so that we can just be a part of the system for whatever reason, which I'm not going to go into now. And when we start to unravel from that, because we recognize we're spirit and we recognize we're here to be, we start to be able to tap more and more and more into our higher self. Now, our higher self is always there guiding us and giving us messages and helping us to navigate. And at some point, we realize this. We realize that these messages we've been getting and this guidance we've been having, and that knowing like, I just need to go to that yoga teacher training, or I just need to be in Mexico at that time, or I just need to go and see that person. We start to recognize that our higher self has been guiding us all this time. And that's because our higher self exists as an already fully actualized, fully self-realized future version of us. And us stuck in this time-bound realm, we're here because on some level we've chosen to incarnate at this time. And so that's a whole other thing, that we have some level of choice, and we have full level of choice when we reach cosmic consciousness, when we reach the full heart resonance, and we are no longer attached to our ego. We're no longer bound and blended with our ego. We have that full free will to be sovereign and to express a soul fully. And then we have full choice about where we take our consciousness from life to life. And until then, we're kind of stuck on this training ground that is Earth. I have some questions here. Hunk wants me to send his email. I will do that. So yeah, spirituality. What is spirituality? Many of us started off on the spiritual path because we felt rejected. So I did a little bit of a reading, and it's just so, of course, apt. Rejection. Many of us feel rejected by our families, our societies, and by the system, by the healthcare system, or whatever it is that's that challenge that arises, and within that dual nature of like light and shadow, good and bad, we're able to see things, and we're able to feel the texture of that resistance, and we're able to kind of wake up and make these realizations. And that rejection that we feel drives us towards our awakening. But ultimately, it wasn't really a rejection. We weren't really rejected. We were ejected. We weren't really rejected. We just rejected ourselves. We were ignoring those parts of us, that our spirit that was like pushing forward, and we were like, no. And then at some point we got sick, or we felt, the family fell apart, or whatever it was, or we just felt like I don't belong to this anymore. I feel pushed out. And we were ejected from that old way. And we were rejected because actually we can go back now and we can say, do you know what? I gave love to that situation, to that family, to the institutions. And I recognize I wasn't rejected. It just was my opportunity. It was my way out. It was the way that I had to see it in its black and white form, so that I could be like, okay, I have another choice that I can make. And this is where like dualistic living, or duality can help us. A lot of people are like, no, duality, we need to move into oneness. And if you're not doing that, you're not spiritual. This is another part of the spiritual righteousness. But the fact of the matter is that we've come here in this dualistic realm to learn, to grow, to be able to clearly see the texture, the resistance, so that we can go, okay, that doesn't feel great, that feels great, there's something there for me to look at. And then we get back to this point of unity where we're able to see it differently. And so we're rejected from this old way, and then we start to kind of recognize, we come into some kind of balance, right? Because we start to recognize that we're not just a machine, we're not just a body, we're not just a mind. We're like, there's something else there. There's something else there. And we start to recognize that we see ourselves. We see that we've developed this false sense of self. We've identified as like soul, because we've heard this term soul and spirit before in movies and stuff like that. And we've identified that our soul spirit is like, it's our mind, actually. That's what we've realized. And then we start to come away from that and start to think, I think there's something else. I think there's something else other than my mind that's actually, and we start to see reflections of our true essential self, soul, nature. And we kind of forget, and then we're like, oh, no, I remember again, I was starting to see, and we forget, and then at some point, it sticks, and we come into that balance where we recognize, I'm soul, and these are the qualities of soul. We recognize that, like that. We stabilize into that real sense of our compassion and our kindness and our curiosity, that self energy. We're like, that's soul, and all the other stuff is mind parts, is the parts of our mind which I love and are so a part of me. At the same time, I was associating that with being my spirit and my soul, and now I recognize I'm coming into that true unity with myself. It's like, right, no, soul, spirit, right, okay, here, parts, mind parts, right, okay, getting a sense of where everything is. And then we remember that, and minute by minute, and then it just becomes natural. We're not forgetting anymore. So there is another beautiful card that came into South, creativity and abundance, which is Star Ancestors, Hidden Secrets, Lost Wisdom, Look a Little Deeper. I mean, this is so bang on for me right now. I am really deep in with a new teacher who is teaching me about hyper dimensions. So other planes of existence beyond this physical realm. And playing and being in those dimensions it helps us to learn these lost secrets, these hidden secrets, this lost wisdom, because this is where the Akashic records, these old records of the ancient wisdom and knowledge and what's come before is up there, and the imprints of the gods and the energies we can interact with, the energies of different deities and gods in these other realms outside of planet Earth. And we find our star ancestors and they share with us this hidden, lost, ancient wisdom. And that again teaches us something about what spirituality is. Spirituality is that beingness. It's that journey of learning of our beingness. It's not how being we are, how spiritual we are. Spirituality isn't about like how spiritual we are. It's about the willingness, the openness, the longing to remember that we are spirit, and that this spirit it transcends just this life. That we're not just spirit just to be here only in this life and that's it, and then it's over, and then we are spirits to navigate, to journey through different lives, through different realms, and to learn to be. So another beautiful card that was pulled for those of you, Gaia, amazing to see you. For those of you that have just joined, we're talking about what is spirituality. Please, when this is finished, go back and watch the rest of this because it's really juicy. And I'm just going to share the last card that I pulled, which is, it's more cosmic stuff, Star Brothers. So Star Brothers is about protection, loyalty, safety, and trust. And ultimately, this is spirituality. Our spirit is, we spend so much of our lifetime when we are not aligned with spirit. We're searching and looking for that. Ultimately, that deep connection and that deep sense and of trust, of loyalty. And a lot of our wounding is around, around not feeling like we can trust other people. And this is ultimately a deep reflection on ourselves, because we haven't remembered and learned that if it starts with here, it starts with our own soul and spirit, and learning to trust within that, and learning to really be loyal to our own journey, and recognize that we are the strongest protection. We are the strongest source of love that we are going to experience. And when we can really appreciate that, then we can trust and love and be kind to anybody else, because we've got nothing more in the way. We've got nothing more to lose, because ultimately we've done this. We've recognized this. We've recognized soul. We've honored soul. We've honored our journey. We've come into the full realization that I can fully trust myself to tap into the wisdom and the knowledge that I need to guide myself, to go and find support and help when I need it, to heal myself, to shelter myself and provide food for myself. Like, I can trust myself to do that and to find others to help me do that. And through ourselves, we connect with our star brothers and star sisters. And then we can start to grow the spiritual community. We cannot grow our spiritual community if we are still stuck with spirit here, if we're still stuck with ourselves, if we're still in self-defeating programs, if we still are unwilling to recognize the power and potential of soul. So I'm going to end my transmission here. Please, please, please go back and watch this transmission. I would absolutely love for you to stay connected. I actually have a cosmic breathwork journey tomorrow, Saturday, so check out the link in my bio if you want to join. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful weekend, and please, yeah, stay in touch and just be. Enjoy being. So I have ended the Instagram live, but I'm still here on Facebook. For those of you that are still here, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be sharing more in the next few weeks about my brand new online training course called Holistic Medicine Practitioner Training. So if you find this stuff interesting and you want to grow your own self practice, professional practice, and also you're looking to develop a business around healing, or maybe you're a consultant, you're a wellness consultant, you're a nutritional therapist, you're a social worker, whatever it is, and you're looking for support to grow your own beautiful offerings to the world, we have a program that's going to be just right for you. It's called the Holistic Medicine Practitioner Training Program. I'm also going to post it on the Flow Friday post, which is going to happen today, sharing what you see, things that are going on in the community. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me, and I send you all my love and deeply honor you and your beingness for being here and being on this journey. It's really comforting knowing that you are here with me too. Bye.